Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Carl, a member of the CK-12 team, and my colleague Lindsay and I will be running today's webinar, Teaching Strategies for Using CK-12. We're so glad that you've decided to join us.
Yes, thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I'm excited to be one of your presenters as we discuss the many ways that you can use CK-12 in your classroom to engage your students and personalize their learning experience.
Before we get into today's content, I'd like to go over a few logistics about the Zoom webinar platform to make sure everyone is comfortable using different windows. You should see two different options on your Zoom screen, one for Q&A and one for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK-12, please post it in the Q&A window. We will pause for a Q&A session after each major topic to address any questions that have been submitted. The chat window is a place for community conversation. We'd love you right now to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, feel free to share your state or country, district, and the subject you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you are sending general posts to all panelists and attendees, and not just to the CK-12 or the panelists. Also, while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you are having any trouble with your video or sound, please let us know in the Q&A or chat window.
Okay, so in today's webinar, we're going to be covering the following topics. First, Carl's going to talk to you about some broad implementation strategies for using CK-12. You're going to see different ways to use CK-12 either as core or as supplemental curriculum. And then next, we'll be sharing some easy to implement teaching strategies, which will cover our new FlexBooks 2.0 platform, concepts, modalities, different interventions, even homework as literacy. Our main goal is that by the end of this session, you're going to come away with specific and actionable strategies to engage your students using CK-12 resources. Before we get into the core content of the webinar today, though, we would love to find out a little bit more about you and your previous experience using CK-12 resources. So we are going to launch one of our polls here. You should see it on your screen in just a moment. I can't see it on my screen, but I hope it's popped up for you guys.
Yeah, I think it has popped up, Lindsay.
Okay, all right, awesome. If you guys can see it. So it's what CK-12 resources have you used previously with your students? And we are asking you to select all of the options that apply. So you can pick more than one here. Have you used our FlexBooks, our interactives that we call our PLIX and our simulations, our adaptive practice, our study guides, videos, real world applications, or the last one is I have not used CK-12 with my students yet, and maybe that's why you have joined us today. So we're going to give you just a few seconds here to see how you're doing answering this poll. Carl, what do you think? Should we give them a few more seconds, or most answers locked in?
I think we're locked in, so if you want to go ahead and give them, yeah, there you go. And here are the results here, kind of interesting. We've got the most popular resource that people have used is, of course, our flagship product, the CK-12 FlexBook, our digital textbooks. Next, it's kind of a tie between study guides and our interactives, PLIX and Sim. Adaptive practice is next. Videos, of course, are very popular. And then 51% of people out there have said, I haven't used CK-12 yet with my students. So this is
awesome.
Really,
that's why they're here today. That's great.
Exactly. I'm so pleased because what I hope to be able to give you by the end of this is something you can use in class tomorrow. For those of you who it's still Thursday, and I know I saw somebody from New Zealand where it's already Friday. So they're already in class. So, but anyway, I hope that with today's webinar, you'll get some really great teaching strategies that will help you use CK-12 with your students very soon.
Great. So reminder, we have made some session resource pages for you. And so we're using a tiny URL, and we will blast this out throughout our webinar today. So if you don't want to open up another window and view this now, we'll make sure that you have opportunities to later. But you're going to tinyurl.com/CK CK-12 teaching strategies. And this is a page that our team's created. It's going to be a front and back page that you could print if you prefer to work through during today's session, or to have on your desk later on when you're thinking about the webinar and trying to remind yourself of all the great strategies that you learned. So this is a link, again, I think it was just blasted out into the chat window, that is a reference page for you guys.
Great. So just a special shout out to all the people who have joined us today, especially those where it's the middle of the night or something close to it. And I've seen we have people from Germany and Kenya and just from all over. And so we really appreciate you taking time out today and joining us here. It's 3 o'clock California time. And so we hope that this will be worthwhile for you and that you're going to end up with a lot of grateful strategies. So let's get right into this, Lindsay. Before we get into any specific ideas of using CK-12, I want to talk about CK-12 from a higher view. CK-12 began simply as a digital replacement for textbooks. We introduced the idea of a FlexBook and it took off from there. These days we offer so much more, but some people are still only using FlexBooks. You can use CK-12 as your core curriculum or as supplemental. Some schools customize a FlexBook and then use a variety of CK-12 modalities like our adaptive practice to also improve student learning. It's their core curriculum, and the CK-12 platform works great to deliver great content. Other schools use a core curriculum other than CK-12, but still supplement that curriculum with CK-12 modalities like our reads, adaptive practice, study guides, concept pages, real-world applications, and videos. One example is that many schools use CPM, College Prep Mathematics, as their core curriculum. Often this is mandated by the school or the district. It's a great program that uses the guided discovery method to teach and build math knowledge. But when a student is sick or on a field trip, they don't have the benefit of the teacher's guidance during this discovery lesson. So teachers give links to the reads on CK-12 to help the student learn what they missed. Also, our other modalities help reinforce their knowledge. Finally, by quickly trying our adaptive practice, the students can see if they understand the concept. Whether it's CPM, Big Ideas, or Engage New York, CK-12 is a great way to supplement that content. Once you've decided to go with CK-12 as your core curriculum, there are 2 different ways you can implement it. The first is to use a FlexBook, whether you customize it or whether you customize it or not, along with all the other CK-12 modalities. This offers the comfort of a book plus the advantages of improved learning with modern digital resources. Parents also like the ability to access the FlexBook. It provides a great foundation that they can relate to. The limitations of this is that a FlexBook is still a linear pathway of learning that is a one-size-fits-all solution. By pairing it with other modalities, personalized learning is achieved. So the second way to use CK-12 as the core curriculum is to use a mix of modalities without the anchor of a FlexBook. Many of our users feel they don't need a textbook anymore. Instead, it's much more useful for them to have a variety of modalities for specific differentiated groups. I might break my students up into 3 groups: the purple group, the green group, and the blue group. I know that the purple group is made up of struggling readers, so I might have them watch a video first, then do an interactive, and finally read a basic level lesson. The green group might start with the interactive, then do the read, and finally an activity where I give them a writing prompt. Remember, you can use CK-12 and its modalities as is with no customization needed. It's quality content that has been written by proven subject matter experts. Then, when you're ready, you can begin the customization process by changing the scope and sequence to match what is used by your school or district. Also, localizing the content helps engage the students and make it relevant to their lives. In the end, you'll end up with quality content that truly improves student learning. We have many public and private schools that use CK-12 simply because it's a platform that helps them deliver the highest quality content possible to their students. So now we've arrived at the really exciting part of this session, real teaching strategies that you can use in your classroom. Wherever I go to an education, or whenever I go to an education conference, I always hope there are a couple of real things that I can use in my classroom the next week. If it's all theoretical, it's really hard for me to justify that it's worth my time. So for the rest of this session, we'll be discussing ways to use CK-12 that you can implement immediately. And for those of you that have brought up the PDF of the session resource page, you can follow along there too. So we've recently launched our brand new FlexBook 2.0 platform, which we think is the next generation of personalized learning. So first teaching strategy is take a look at our FlexBook 2.0. It covers, it offers active engagement of students, a new, simpler interface, and ways to save teachers time. I would frame it with something like, we released 9 math and science books in our 2.0 platform. You can use them and you can even customize them. Or you can even take one of your old FlexBooks and you can create a new one on the 2.0 platform. If you want some help with that, contact us and we'll help you pilot this process of converting to 2.0. Many users have told us that they loved our FlexBooks. They also loved our other resources, but really didn't have time to hunt all over our website looking for them. So we listened and we made changes. That's how we arrived at our new CK-12 FlexBook 2.0 platform. All the resources you need are right there inside of each lesson. Direct access to our adaptive practice, our PLIX, and sim interactives. For the first time, a list of curated modalities can be found on the lesson page. Teachers can even add other resources like videos and links. The bottom line that all this means, less searching, more using. We have simplified our interface to show a cleaner, more focused learning environment. This will prove to be easier for students to focus with fewer distractions on the page. Finally, an easy-to-access toolbar at the bottom puts all the tools and resources just a click away. And if you're familiar with our 2.0, our old FlexBooks, you'll see that this is much, much simpler. Finally, our new FlexBook 2.0 platform saves teachers time. And that's something we all need. For the first time ever, teachers can now bulk assign multiple concepts to their students, reducing this process to just a couple of clicks. And like I said earlier, each lesson has hand-picked CK-12 resources right there in the lesson. No more having to search all over the CK-12 website to find the best content. Finally, we've made it easy to adapt our content to exactly match your scope and sequence.
Okay, we could stop there for some questions, but it looks like we've got a full team here. We've got Katie, we've got Star, me, Carl, we're all answering some of your questions. Again, just a reminder, if you guys want Carl to answer anything live or do some demos, type your questions into the Q&A queue and we'll type answers to some of them and we'll field some of them live. But for right now, Carl, why don't we just keep going and start talking about the next section.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the next slide, and we're going to be talking about teaching strategies that all have to do with concepts and modalities. Up until 2012, CK-12 was simply a FlexBook company, digital textbook. Then in 2012, we broke up our content into about 3,500 concepts. We created concept pages, each with a variety of modalities of learning for that concept. So we'll be going over the following teaching strategies: linking to concept pages, embedding various modalities into a lesson, assigning real-world applications, using PLIX interactives during class, taking the PLIX interactive open discussion questions to a deeper level, using simulations for physics and chemistry, and maximizing the browser standards to find great content.
All right, maybe to help us start thinking about learning using these concepts, I want to show you guys all a short video where our co-founder and executive director helps us understand this fundamental shift in learning for concept-based learning.
When I was a kid, I could never understand how electrons kind of move through, a bulb. How does that happen? In reality, a teacher doesn't really teach a book. A really teacher is teaching a concept in a book.
So students set goals for their learning. The teacher set up the conditions for all the available resources, which is, 10 different kids in one class may take 10 different paths and approach the resources in CK-12 in 10 different ways.
It provides kids who maybe learn more traditionally a method, who maybe need a visual aid, a method. For example, we're doing factoring today and we're learning about algebra tiles, and some kids are like, oh, now I understand it, whereas yesterday maybe they weren't. Picking up the concept is easy.
If you think about, as a teacher, you want to teach someone the grain that you can teach so that you can build on that knowledge.
By breaking down a subject into different concepts, the teacher can pick and choose a curriculum that is in the order and at the level that they want.
I love CK-12 content because it provides a starting point for me. If I feel my students need more background on a subject or a concept, it gives me a place to search for concepts to reinforce what we were learning that were maybe not embedded originally in the lesson, but that were provided through CK-12 website in general.
So we'd love teachers to think about moving to the concept-based learning so you can catch where the gaps lie for each student.
Concept-based learning is a great way to start implementing personalized learning, and each of our concept pages allow students to learn it your way. They can pick and choose different modalities and then use practice to see if there are any gaps. So we think that digital tools really are changing the way that students learn.
All right, so let's get started. And one of the first teaching strategies here is provide links to concepts and modalities. So this is a concept page here. And what we want you to think about here is all the different ways of learning, all the different modalities are available on a CK-12 concept page. And remember I said there are about 3,500 of these concept pages for each concept in math and science, middle school, high school, and even elementary. So you can use this page and tell your students, look, you can keep on learning after you leave my class, or maybe if there's something you didn't understand, by giving them the URL to the concept page on CK-12, you are offering them the opportunity to learn it their way, to choose which modality to use. And it's really good to go add a link to the concepts that you're covering in your Google Classroom or any LMS that you are using. So to me, this is the number one thing that I want you to take away from today. You can maybe at the beginning of the week say, look, this week we're going to be covering these 8 concepts in class, and I'm going to give you all the links to the CK-12 concept pages, and you can go and explore these as you need, or if you're absent one day, or if you're on a field trip, however you need to use this page, the learning can happen here using CK-12. All right, the next thing we're going to do is build a playlist inside of your lesson. So one of the interesting ways that you can share CK-12 content is in your own lesson, like on CK-12. And I call it a digital playlist. And you can see here in the example, I've picked out a PLIX and a real-world application and a video, all from within CK-12, but obviously I could put things from other places too. If there's a PhET simulation that you like, or whatever it is you want to use. So by creating this digital playlist, it makes it so that your students have opportunities to keep on learning, and this is kind of your curated list of things that they might do once they're completed with the lesson. All right, next we have learn using real-world applications. With over 2,000 real-world applications, CK-12 can offer a connection of a concept to the real world. And as we know, this is often something that is really important to get students understanding a complex idea. So one of the things that I like to suggest to teachers is use one of our 2,000 real-world applications as a warm-up. And remember, you can go to the concept page and you'll see the real-world applications listed there. Okay. The other thing that I want to offer you is that you reach higher thinking levels using the RWAs, as we call them, to help students bring ideas together using analysis and modeling. Because what they're talking about is real, it's easier for them to kind of work on the problem and actually come up with a solution. So, take a look at one of our over 2,000 real-world applications and see how can you use those to really make your lessons more engaging. Our PLIX interactives have become really popular, and we know that teachers are using them in a large variety of ways. If you haven't checked them out, we can go to ck12.org/PLIX, and you'll see a beautiful browse page of over 1,200 PLIX interactives. And the idea with these is that they're fairly simple, and they really get the students into a concept quickly. So you can see, like in this lunar phase interactive, there is a little sandbox area to the right, and then there's a description to the left. And I'm going to suggest use it as a warm-up. Have a link in your LMS or maybe your Google Classroom, and they know to come in, open up their Chromebooks, and get started. And they can be exploring a new concept to them without, creating kind of foundational knowledge of it without needing you to be there getting it started. And that way you can take roll and do all the things that you need to do at the beginning of the lesson. And remember, our PLIX interactives have questions that are associated with them that help the students check their understanding. And then the last question is always an open discussion question. Another way to use PLIX is during the middle of a class to kind of get them solidifying and kind of confirming their knowledge. And finally, of course, you can use it as an exit ticket where, they do the PLIX and they answer the questions to make sure they've really learned what it is you expected them to learn today. So PLIX are a really good teaching strategy to use throughout your lesson whenever it works best for you. All right, as I mentioned, the last question of the PLIX, you can see here on the left-hand side, is always an open discussion question. And to me, this is really exciting because they are questions that make our students think, make them analyze, make them combine ideas. And you could use it, for example, as a writing prompt where they do the PLIX and then maybe they write a paragraph solution to the open discussion question. You'll see that we don't ever give them an answer, and often there's more than one answer that you could offer. So it is a great opportunity for students to kind of show higher level thinking. Another way to use an open discussion question from a PLIX is the think, pair, share, where they kind of think on their own, they pair up with somebody, and then they share their ideas, and then finally share it out with the rest of the class. Online discussion in the PLIX forum. Okay, so we have a cafe discussion forum where students can talk about things on CK-12 and that they're learning in general. And the PLIX forum is just wonderful because it's a space where students can have discussions about these open discussion questions. And if there's a discussion going on for that question, we've already put a link right there that the students can follow. This way, it's not required that they have a class and to go do this, that learning can also happen independently. All right, up next are our simulations. And different from our PLIX interactives, the simulations are beautifully animated, complex simulations with multiple variables. And at this point, we have about 87 physics one and about 15 chemistry. And these can also be used in a variety of ways for middle school if you teach middle school science. And even like math classes can take advantage of some of these simulations. So one way to use the simulation is just as a brief activity. We're going to go in and we're going to kind of experience this one part of the simulation. But another way is to actually spend a whole period using the wealth of information exploration that can happen during the simulation. The first part of a simulation is the kind of going in and learning about it, and then we give you a really exciting sandbox that each student gets to go experience these concepts. And then finally, we have extension activities. Where else do we see this concept? So you can really spend a lot of time going in and kind of exploring these concepts. Also with simulations, we have videos and worksheets. We have teacher walkthrough tutorial videos. So if it's not exactly a concept that you're super comfortable with, go ahead and watch our tutorial video made by actual teachers to help you kind of understand it so that you can use it with your students. And then we have these great electronic and PDF companion worksheets. So I really encourage teachers of all math and science subjects to take a look at these and find out how can I use these to engage with my students, simply as a brief little activity in the middle of my lesson, or possibly as the whole lesson for the day. All right, up next, we have our standards browser. So from the home page on CK-12, when you're logged in as a teacher, you have access to a standards menu item. And that menu item can take you directly to the Common Core math standards or the next generation science standards. And then for each one of those standards, you will see the CK-12 topics that support that standard. So when you're looking for content to address a specific standard, whether it's Common Core or NGSS, CK-12 is the beautiful place for you to go to access really quality content that you can use to teach that standard. Once again, you get there by going to ck12.org, and you'll see a menu item up above where it says standards, and you can choose that. Now I'm going to pause here because I know at this point you're going, wow, I've already gotten a lot of information. And so I'm going to let your brain kind of relax for just a few moments. And Lindsay, let's take a little break.
Yeah, why don't we check out the Q&A. Again, I know Katie and Star have been typing some answers here, but Carl, maybe you can check on your end. What's active that you think our users would like to know?
Sure, absolutely. One of the questions here is, instead of having a whole book, a FlexBook could simply be a unit. Is that correct? And absolutely, Russ, that is a really good way of creating a FlexBook, because you can create FlexBooks unit by unit if you'd like. And they're easier that way. I mean, it's the same way in your class that you might have a packet in the olden days of photocopied things. So yeah, you don't have to do the whole book at the same time. But just remember, if you did want to start a FlexBook at the beginning of the year, let's say right now, you can keep updating it and customizing and tinkering with it, and the students use the same URL throughout the whole year. And as you make changes, these will be reflected in the student versions. So, you know, kind of think about what you're trying to do here, but a lot of teachers start the year with a blank FlexBook, and they use it as a container, as a packet to kind of put all their content into. There's a question here, if I have a FlexBook, can I upgrade it to 2.0? Absolutely. The one thing I'm going to say, though, the 2.0 platform is brand new. And so we think it's pretty spectacular. It is kind of in beta form right now, which means we're still working with it and adding new features all the time. But there is a really great help article that you can access through our help page. Go to the FlexBook area under teachers and parents, and then you'll see how to convert from a original FlexBook into 2.0. And maybe somebody can paste that into the chat window, the direct link there. All right, let's go ahead and take one more question, and then we can move on. So somebody says, oops, it's jumped around. I'm currently using CK-12 through Canvas, but each read and process has to be assigned as a separate assignment. It sure does. So that's why we went on and designed FlexBooks 2.0, because of that problem. But at this point, you've got to make an assignment for each thing you're assigning, okay? Let me see if there's one more question we can pull here. Is there a way for students to self-check their progress, such as quizzes? Okay, so one of the things that I'll mention, and with all of this, today we're just doing kind of easy to implement things, but on CK-12, we have a really powerful adaptive practice with machine learning behind it. And you'll definitely want to check that out, ck12.org/practice. And this is going to give Students who are working on their own, a great way to see if they've learned a concept, and it even helps fill in the gaps. Now, if the teacher wants feedback on how their students are doing, then the teacher needs to assign that concept through adaptive practice. And I encourage you to go at the bottom of the screen. There is a webinars link, and we've been making webinars for several years now, and you can go back and see a whole 1-hour presentation of a webinar simply about our practice to find out more about this. Today, I'm simply giving you some really easy to implement ideas on CK-12, but of course, you can go spend more time actually learning kind of the way to get these things done. All right,
Great.
so we're going to pause here. Thanks to everybody that still has questions out there, but we're going to move forward so we can make sure we get through all these great ideas, and continue to put questions in the Q&A window, and we will do our best and to answer them along the way. All right. So our next section of easy to implement teaching strategies will show how to use CK-12 as an intervention covering adaptive practice, pre, post assessments, and differentiated classes. Okay. So the first one is adaptive practice. I was just talking about this. So you can implement our adaptive practice fairly easily with your students. The page that you see right here is an example of what's happening. The students are served up questions, and the goal is to get 10 right in a row. And the questions come at different levels, and the computer quickly identifies what level is this student at, and then offers content to build on their foundational knowledge. Along the way, if it discovers there's a gap, it offers content in the moment. It offers intervention. So if Sally's struggling, it'll tell Sally, look, you're struggling on this, and 89% of students do better after they do this interactive, or read this lesson, or watch this video. So the students have kind of a motivation because they've just been struggling. And when they've been struggling in that moment, we offer them some great CK-12 content to help fill in that gap. And if you make an assignment out of these practice questions, then you, the teacher, will get feedback in the report form on what your students are doing. And you can even drill down and see the exact questions and things that they were missing. So if you haven't looked at adaptive practice yet, please spend some moments and take a look, because it's one of the most powerful things about CK-12. And the more that students use it, the smarter our system becomes in really trying to figure out how to help students learn. All right, our next teaching strategy is use CK-12 to create pre and post test. And this is using CK-12's quiz feature. So we call it a quiz, but you can actually set it up to where it is a summative assessment with no hints and timed and one attempt. So you're in charge of all that. But you can create for your content like chapter 3, you can create a pre-test and then maybe even give the same test or a similar test using a post-test. And this will assess their starting knowledge and also show growth. The really exciting thing, though, is that CK-12 makes it easy because we offer you our entire bank of questions to pull from, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can use CK-12's questions. You can see here, like with the first question set, solve one-step linear inequalities, and we have a bunch of questions, and they chose 20 of those. Okay, so you're in charge of which questions. You can specifically see each question and choose it. You can also add in your own questions. So our pre and post tests are a really powerful way to use CK-12's 150,000 question bank in order to come up with your pre and post test. All right, on the next slide, we'll be taking a look at how to use CK-12 for differentiated classes. Remember, on CK-12, you have the ability to create little classes or even mini classes, and you can base these on skills and needs. So I talked earlier about the purple group. Here's the purple group. And I know that my purple group are maybe students that struggle with literacy. And so I might have different activities for this group to do. And there might be the green group that has other issues that I'm trying to help them with. And the nice thing is when we're all working on CK-12, there's no stigma, okay? Because the purple kids don't know, they're not all sitting in the corner, okay? So everyone's getting content at the appropriate level. So take a look at, creating differentiated classes on CK-12, and then you can make assignments that specifically address the needs of those kind of mini classes. You can also give assignments to the whole class, the way you would want sometimes. So you don't always have to use differentiated classes. All right. The next kind of section that we're going to be talking about is CK-12 to help you with homework, the bane of every teacher's existence, and questionable on whether it's a learning tool or not. There's lots of debate out there, but I think you'll see there's some benefit in having students use CK-12, possibly as part of classwork or as homework. All right, so adaptive practice as homework. Think about this, if you used to get from a large publisher, we used to get a big box, and the big box had a lot of worksheets in it. And the problem with the worksheet is it's got 50 questions, and all the kids have to do all the questions, and it's, some kids who don't understand it, it's 50 questions they don't understand. If the student already knows it, there's no reason for them to do that either. So instead of doing a worksheet, you can assign the CK-12 adaptive practice because it adapts to the level of the student. And what I might do is, like I mentioned earlier, you might be covering 8 concepts this week in class, and go ahead and assign those 8 concepts practice and tell them it needs to be done by Friday. The really cool thing is the students can do this work on their own smartphone. And so that they love the ability to answer the questions on the smartphone while maybe using their laptop or their Chromebook as a reference while they're doing it. Remember that our adaptive practice is a learning tool. So we offer hints that have been written by teachers, and we really try to provide this as an opportunity to learn concepts deeply. So give it a try next week. Assign 5 concepts or 8 concepts to your students and see how they do instead of your typical homework that is a marginal kind of questionable learning activity. See how they do with this, and then write me an email at carl@ck12.org and let me know how it went. I really would be interested in finding out, because we've had a lot of great response to people who've made this jump. Another interesting way to use CK-12 is you can flip your classroom. So the idea of flipping your classroom, as many of you know, is you take the basic content and the students learn that outside of class, so that in class you can conquer the higher level thinking of that concept when you're around with the support of their peers. So CK-12 has so many videos that you don't even have to make your own for the flipped classroom, that you can use the CK-12 videos. For those of you that have seen them, one of our employees, Laramie, has a great sense of humor and has made just some really wonderful algebra videos that the students seem to like. You can also use our PLIX and Sim interactives as a homework assignment. And once again, they're doing foundational work on their own, so that when you bring them back into class, you can talk about more engaging, higher level ideas involved with that concept. You can also pair all the concepts that you see with all the modalities you see with our adaptive practice. So you can flip your classroom and then give them a little bit of adaptive practice to do as a way of seeing how much they know before you have your big lesson in class. Our next section of easy to implement teaching strategies will show you how to use CK-12 to improve literacy. Reading across the curriculum is very important. So we're going to use CK-12 to show you how to help that. So,
Carl, once again, why don't we start out this section by hearing from a CK-12 teacher who uses the digital highlighting feature on CK-12 to help her students with their academic text.
That's a great idea.
A student has more than one learning modality, learns through multiple modalities. A feature that CK-12 provides is the highlighting with different colors. So I'm able to not only emphasize a key point, but I'm able to assign it to a specific color that can also trigger maybe another memory for them.
Great. So Anna was just talking about this. I know Lindsay and I both, we enjoyed visiting Anna's classroom and just seeing the work that she's done with her students, kind of talking to the text. And really, they use the CK-12 highlighting features to really get them to understand how to process academic texts. So the really cool thing is they use one color, for example, like the thesis statement or the main point, and then they use another color for all the supporting parts. And they get used to this. And it is that she has built some amazing skills with her students, most of whom are second language learners. So, I think, the really cool thing is after you've made all these highlights on CK-12, it puts a little summary part at the bottom of the page. And you can see that here on this slide. The notes and highlight part has all the information that you've highlighted. In addition to that, you can annotate. And one thing that I know I've seen several teachers do is they have the students summarize the concept in a kind of one or two sentence paragraph. And this is a great way when they're studying for a quiz. All they have to look at is this notes and highlight section, and it's going to show them all the important stuff that they're doing. So we know highlighting is synthesizing, and it is really a great way to get our students into processing academic texts. Another really cool feature of CK-12 is when you're on any lesson, you can go to the bottom of the page, scroll down, and you can translate to any of the Google translation languages. And this is really useful for so many of our students. What I've seen is where the students have the English version, for example, in their Chromebook, but in their hand is their smartphone, and they've translated it into Arabic or into Farsi or into Spanish. And they're using kind of a dual screen method to help them access the core content here. So make sure that your students know how to use this feature. And really help them that they want to make sure to get the language that they want. Another thing to point out is when you look on our site at the FlexBooks, we have both math and science FlexBooks that have been already translated into Spanish by native Spanish speakers. So you'll find those on the site. Just go ahead and click in the search bar on CK-12 Spanish or FlexBooks in Spanish, and you'll see a whole list of FlexBooks that are specifically written, not just Google translated, but written in Spanish. As a reminder, I can see a couple questions coming in the chat window. We focus mostly on the Q&A window for questions that you want answered. That's where our team is quickly working through your questions. So as a reminder, please ask your questions in the Q&A window. And I know it's a little confusing because at times Zoom can be very new. All right, foreign language support. Finally here, we have involving parents. So one of the best ways of using CK-12 is to send parents links to our concept pages. So imagine if you're a parent and over the weekend you get an email or on Friday saying, next week, in my math class, we're covering these concepts. And here are the links to the CK-12 concept page that kind of have content for all the things we'll be learning. And that way, parents can go in and watch a video. They can, do all the things their students are doing, and they can familiarize themselves with that concept again. And parents love this. So if you haven't, I know that not everyone sends out a weekly email to their parents, but I tell you, I have heard from so many parents that they really appreciate being part of their students' kind of class and knowledge that they're learning. And especially when it's something they've learned at some time, and they just need a little kind of relearning. And the CK-12 website is a great place because once again, like you, and like the students, they're going to the concept page and they're learning it their way. Or as I like to say for teachers, they're teaching it their way. The other thing that you should do is if you're using a FlexBook on the site, send that URL to the parents. And I even suggest making a little tiny URL of something really easy like Carl's biology book. So tinyurl.com/Carl's biology book. And parents can remember that too. And they can look at it when they're at work. And they can look at it when they're at home. And even bringing it up on their phone is a possibility. But parents like that they've got a FlexBook there for them to use. I have to tell you, my son just graduated high school, and I was really frustrated that so many of his classes stored the content like in a Google folder. And as a parent, I had no access to this Google folder, and I had a teenage son who didn't quite share everything with me. And to me, it was frustrating at times because I really wanted to be a part of what was he learning? What was he learning in history? And what was he learning in math? And I think by putting content into a FlexBook, it not only helps your students have everything in one place, but it makes it fully accessible to other people. The other thing I'm going to throw out there at this time is, you know that one of the benefits of CK-12, we don't charge for anything, but our currency is usage, and we want our things to be used. So by creating a FlexBook and then sharing it on our website, you're helping other teachers too. You know, I saw that there's some IB people here, and we've got some great IB math books from the middle years program, MYP, on our site and on the schools pages. Go take a look at those. And, you know, like, there's so much about the sharing. As educators, we can't spend all our time reinventing the wheel. And so by sharing your FlexBooks with other people, it really does help everybody. The other thing I'm going to offer too is, remember, with your parents, it's easy to support the parents' home language using CK-12, because they can go take a look at the lesson in their home language and have access to it. And, you know, we've heard so much about that. And I think, why don't we watch a little video? We have Cynthia Ontiveros, a principal in El Paso, Texas, and she wants to talk about the power of the translation feature of CK-12.
I met a parent who was struggling with supporting his daughter because he did not speak English very well. So I brought up the CK-12 on my iPad. I quickly showed him how he can change the language, and he was nearly in tears, and he felt just so excited that now that he could help his daughter, which was emotional for me too, knowing that this is what CK-12 is about. This is what we want our parents, our language learners, no matter where they come from, no matter what language they speak, they need to find a place in our classroom, and CK-12 helps us to do that.
All right,
So,
why don't we pause again for a minute and see how we're doing with our Q&A. And I know there were a few questions in chat as well. Carl, I don't know if you want to share your screen to do any demos here of anything that anybody's asking about. I know we had a few questions about the pre and post tests that you were mentioning earlier. I don't know if you want to start there.
Sure. I think, you know, somebody asked, can you use the pre and post tests for science too? Absolutely. And I'm just going to quickly show you here. From the home page, I'm going to click on Library, and then I'm going to do Create New Quiz. So homepage, Library, Create New Quiz. And this is where I can come and say, okay, well, my year has just begun, my first day of school with Tuesday, pre-test for Chapter 1, Linear Equations, okay? And this is, if it's a test, I only want them to have one attempt, and I'm gonna put a time limit on it because I don't want them spending all day on it because we have other things to do. So it's a 15-minute thing, and I'm gonna turn off the hints. And this is the pre-test to Chapter 1. So from the beginning then, I'm going to go choose, like, let's go look up linear equations. I can search for CK-12's contents here. So let's start with some graphs. And it tells me there are 94 questions. And let's select that. So it's chosen automatically 20 of them. And this is how you build a pretest. In this case, it's called a quiz. So then you can edit it. I can edit exactly which questions it's doing. And in fact, maybe if I don't want 20, I can choose whichever ones. I can click on any of these questions and get a preview of it. So does this table describe a linear equation? Oh, that's a really good question. And I want to be able to, I want my students for sure to answer that. So you can see here that building the quiz the pretest is really easy with the CK-12 questions. You search for the concept, and then you choose the questions. And you can also, as you see here, add questions yourself, okay? So that's kind of the basics of pretest and post-test.
Okay, Carl, we had another question here about schools who have limited technology. What are some suggestions you have for those kinds of schools?
Absolutely. You know, we have a lot of schools who use us with limited technology or limited infrastructure. I think there's kind of a couple ways of doing that. I was just talking to a school in Hayward, California, and they were complaining that they didn't have enough Chromebook carts to go around. And, and so one of the things we talked about was using, most of the high school students these days have access to smartphones. They might not have any data plans on them, but at least they have access to the device. And if you can work with your school team and give them kind of access to the Wi-Fi, it becomes a device that's already in every kid's pocket. And there are ways of making sure they are focused and using appropriate websites, but the benefits are huge. And remember, you can access CK-12 FlexBooks on the smartphone. You can access the adaptive practice through the CK-12 app. So there's so much they can do without the need of kind of getting one-to-one computers for everybody. The other things you can do too is obviously with like access to computer labs or Chromebook carts, 1 or 2 days a week, really choose those lessons from CK-12 that really work well and make sure that you're using the technology on those days, like the PLIX and Sims that, or watching the videos that you could only do. We have a lot of districts too that are still printing things out. The state of Utah has a large program that uses CK-12 for their science, and they actually print out each book for a student and they give it to them every year for the price of $4.25 per student. And the student gets to keep the book, they can highlight in it, and they can do all the annotations that they need to. So kind of depending on your level of technology, as more and more schools have access to more technology, CK-12 can provide kind of an enhanced experience.
Okay, Carl, I'm going to steal the screen back here just for the sake of time to go over some reminder type information. So this is kind of last call for those of you who still have questions that you would like our team to answer. We always stay on after we formally close the webinar to make sure that you guys have had all your questions answered. But I wanted to promo here. We do have some more webinars that are coming up. Again, today's session was really just a high-level overview of a lot of our different resources and how you might start using them right away in your classroom. But if you want to do a deeper dive into any specific topic, we do have some upcoming webinars to address these. On September 19th, we are going to be running a webinar for getting started with FlexBooks. So that's a great entry point if you're thinking about FlexBooks, wondering how you might go about selecting one. What's the difference between, FlexBooks and this new FlexBooks 2.0? How can you customize? How can you localize? We're going to answer all those questions and more on September 19th. And then on September 25th, we're going to be doing a Getting Started with CK-12 Adaptive Practice and Assignments. Carl just showed you a little bit about how this works, but we're going to do this hour-long webinar where it shows you kind of the nitty-gritty on all the bells and whistles to these tools so that you can maximize them with your students. If you need to register for any upcoming webinar, you can do that on ck12.org/webinars, and we will also post all of our webinars there. So if you're not able to join us live, we know that the time does not work for everybody's time zone. You can always check in at ck12.org/webinars and see one of the recordings. Today's presentation has been recorded, and we will be posting that within about 24 hours on that page. Also a reminder that if you haven't accessed it yet, you might want to open up a browser and go to the tinyurl.com/CK12 teaching strategies. And you can see just that two-sided reference page that I referenced earlier. And then I wanted to briefly mention that a lot of you guys have heard of our CK-12 Certified Educator Program. And each summer, we run an intensive professional development program for educators who are looking to become CK-12 certified. And kind of the rules to do that, we ask that you attend a series of 5 or more live webinars, and then watch 2 on-demand sessions and complete all of the matching assignments. So our summer intensive program happened this year in July, and it is already wrapped up for the year. But we get so many questions of people who want to, get started right away with these materials. So if you joined us for this webinar today, if you're listening to me talk about this, and you're interested in stringing together some live webinars throughout the school year that will count towards your certified educator status, then the thing that would be best for you guys to do is you can find more information at ck12.org/certified, or email Jumpstart, and that Jumpstart email gets to me, Lindsay, or Katie, and we'll give you some information and a link to the assignment to make sure that you can get credit for today's session. So yeah, Jumpstart at ck12.org, send us a brief message if you want more information about that. We do have a feedback form after every webinar. We love to get your feedback. It's a super short questionnaire where we're asking about the content and the presentation, and we read all of your feedback, and it helps us to improve and plan the next webinars. So this is another tiny URL. It's being put in the chat window for you guys, but it is tinyurl.com, CK12 webinar 1819, as in the school year 1819. This is the same form for every webinar. We appreciate any of your feedback. So as we approach the hour mark, we're gonna wrap up here. You are supported by our team. We have an amazing support team at CK12, so you can always send us an email to support@CK12. We are also on the social networks, so you can see us at CK12 Foundation, and you can always use the hashtag CK12 Foundation as well. And so that pretty much wraps up our core programming today. For you guys who need to sign off, you're welcome to do so. But as promised, we are going to stay on for any additional questions that you would like our team to answer. So, Carl, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I don't know if you need to share your screen here and if we have anything in Q&A.
Absolutely. Well, before people leave too, I just want to say thanks so much to everybody who joined us. I know it was a little frenetic at times. There's so much to cover. And at the end of a long teaching day, I realized it was really, it's a lot. So I really appreciate you taking time to hang with us and to kind of figure out what are some things you can start using in your class this next week. And I'm hoping that you've left with those. And if you didn't print out already or look at the teaching resource page that we made for this session, I think it's a great way to remind yourself with all of our resource pages, print it out and put it up next to your desk in your classroom. And it'll remind you, oh yeah, I really still need to do that. I need to try out one of those PLIX and I need to find one for next week. So let me do that. So, so much information was shared, and definitely, as Lindsay said, it's an overview. And come back again or watch one of our last. We have all of our webinars archived from, since we started doing webinars. So make sure that you look through them. And if there's anything that you want to get started on today, like if all of a sudden you're saying, I need to customize a FlexBook for my geometry class, guess what? We've got a brand new Common Core book that's really exciting, and it has interactives built in, and you can get started doing that today, or at least over the weekend. So we're going to go ahead and answer some of these questions that have popped up in the question window. I logged in late. Can I view the recording later? Yes, in about 24 hours on the webinars page. We'll be posting the entire thing. Please go take a look at that. And for anything you missed, or maybe you want to watch it again because it's so much information that you've got. We have a question out there that is, do you have any more plans for more subjects? And what I want to be able to say is CK-12 has primarily been focused on math and science and a little bit of writing and spelling. But I want to show you how to find a whole bunch more information that has been already created by our great users. So if you're here, you go to CK12.org. And if you scroll down to the 3 or 4 Explore windows, you have direct access to our simulations. You have direct access to our PLIX, our adaptive practice. And to me, this is a really interesting one for you because it's direct access to schools that have published things. So it knows I'm in California, and so it's offering me schools in California that have made books and they've published them. They've shared them with the world, which sure helps us with our mission of reaching more and more people. But I wanted to show you here, one way to do it is I know that our friends over in beautiful El Paso, Texas, we heard from Cynthia, but let's scroll down to El Paso, Texas. And I want you to see some of the great books that they've created. They've done, you know, some science books here, and then moved in some math books. But then it gets kind of interesting because we've got AP US History, AP Human Geography, AP Government, Macroeconomics. So there's a lot of information here that has been contributed by our users. And maybe there's going to be one that you don't even know who made it, so you have to search for it. So let's just type in history up here. And the first thing you're going to see is there's a CK-12 book that covers colonial America through World War I, but you can also look for community contributed. And this is a separate tab. And I'm going to click on community contributed, and then I'm going to filter it so it only shows me FlexBooks that have history in them. Okay, so there's a lot of, there's the CK-12 book that I was mentioning, but you can see there's a lot of different ones here. Tennessee U.S. history, post-Reconstruction to the present. Here's Tennessee U.S. history, Pennsylvania history. So many great things have been created by our users and shared with you. So EPISD, World History Studies. So lots of different things here that you can see. Here's one since 1877. It was updated this past summer by their great curriculum people. So lots of different things that you can find using the search bar. The only other thing too that I'll show you, if you're a science person and you want to find specifically FlexBooks that people have created to NGSS, I typed in NGSS up there. Once again, I click on community contributed. And then I'm going to search for only FlexBooks. And you can see here quite a lot of, here's an integrated science book that was made by Chuck Faber. And so a lot of great content here that's already been done, and just use our search bar up here to go find it. And remember to filter if you want to look first for CK-12 content, but then find out what our users have contributed here. And then once again, filter over here under categories by FlexBook textbooks. All right, how do I link it to Google Classroom? Well, the nice thing is from within CK-12 environment, let's go, for example, to, I'm just gonna go inside something here. I'm gonna go inside his book because it's easy. It's right in front of me. All right. So I can assign to class. I can assign this read to a class. So I click here and you'll see my options are to assign it to a CK-12 class, or you can assign it to a Google Classroom class. So we make it really, really easy to integrate into Google Classroom. And if you assign the practice, the results of the practice, like what percentage they got right, etc., is passed back into Google Classroom automatically. And we also have a similar pass back into Canvas and Schoology, It's Learning. So there's a variety of LMSs that we're already integrated to. Just know that the new FlexBook 2.0 has not been implemented on all the LMSs yet. At this point, it's just CK-12 and Google Classroom that can use the FlexBook 2.0. So, well, Lindsay, I don't see anything else on our Q&A window. Anything else outstanding that you see?
It looks empty right now. If we missed anything, you can email. Oh, here's a question. Final hour here. Can you show again how students can highlight?
Sure. I can do that for sure. So here I am in this lesson, and you see these little things over here? Like this is my highlighter and that's my annotator. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight here. Photosynthesis includes many, so I can do this like that, okay? And I can change, I can change color, I can add a note, I can delete it. But the really cool thing, as I said, is at the bottom here now, there is a summary section of everything that I highlighted. Really, really great kind of skill for our students to be learning. So, alrighty, and it looks like, can individual mentors become CK-12 certified? Yeah, pretty much anybody can become certified. They don't have to. If you're a tutor, you don't need to be an official teacher in a public school classroom. So there's a question about Earth Science NGSS. Go ahead and use that search bar is what I'm going to tell you, and you'll see what things are out there and available to us. Alrighty, folks, well, that is it, and we appreciate you being part of our CK-12 family, and we look forward to seeing some of the great content that you use and develop and share with the world here on CK-12. Until next time, thanks a lot. Lindsay, any final words?
No, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Alrighty.